We on black time over here, which is my time, which is whenever I show up, which is Gandalf time, because a wizard arrives precisely when he's meant to. Frodo. We got hand farts. We got black voices. We've got Lord of the Rings references. We've got movie trailers. What else do you want in your life? Why are you even listening to any other content, quote, creator? What else is there? Nothing. Now, I do like horror movies, and I will say that Weapons was certainly a better horror movie than Together. There were some aspects of Together that I thought were okay. I don't like body horror movie in general, though. The only body horror that I can think of that is pretty good is some of the David Cronenberg movies. Otherwise, it's usually just gross, dude. It's like that, you know what I mean? So we watched this the other night, and then we saw Weapons in the theater. And I will say that Weapons together with Long Legs was probably two of the best horror movies that I've seen in the past few years. There's a couple others that I thought were pretty decent. Let me see. Somebody was asking me the other day, what's some good horror movies? Well, Heretic was really good. The first Omen actually was good. I didn't expect that to be that good. Smile and Smile 2 were pretty creepy, actually good horror movies. And a couple of, maybe Night House with Rebecca Hall was pretty good. That's about it. I mean, you know, a good horror movie is few and far between. And so usually the only thing that makes for a good analysis is when they have esoteric, occult, symbolic elements in it. This one didn't have a whole lot of that, although the overall theme did end up being pretty heavily esoteric. And it actually shared some parallels with the other movie, the recent Josh Brolin, what's her name, Julia Garner, Weapons. Some parallel symbolism. We'll cover this really briefly because I think what I'm going to try to do is, as I cover different segments and as we get people timestamping, I'm going to clip out the movie section and make it its own clip. So this will be the first, 10, 15 minutes of a separate clip. Otherwise, I just can't figure out. It's too time racking and it takes up too much time to sit here and do 20-minute clip segments when the most efficient way is obviously just to clip one long live stream. And live streams are the only way to make a living anyway because ad revenue itself doesn't make enough. But you get a lot of views with clips because people don't have attention spans over 20 minutes on YouTube, that is. So here we have Allison Brie from Community, who was actually she's a really good comedic actress in Community. Jamie and I just finished Community. It was a lot funnier than I expected. I was kind of blown away. And again, I don't praise a lot of shows because there's not that many shows that I think are funny and impress me. The first 4 seasons are just absolutely genius. Last season kind of trails off because I think they knew they were getting canceled. There's a lot of really trippy meta references, a lot of pop culture references that are pretty good. Even some pretty in-depth philosophical references throughout Community. If you've never watched it and you're looking for like a really funny kind of wacky, almost, again, trippy comedy, I would say it's up there. As Chevy Chase leaves the show, and again, I'm not a huge Chevy Chase fan, but for whatever reason, he's actually really funny in Community. He plays the perfect boomer, and so they've got these archetypes of characters and that was still when you could kind of make fun of people groups, you could make fun of ethnicities. Back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, you could get away with that. So it's kind of similar to The Office in certain ways. If you like The Office, you would like Community. I actually think Community might be funnier than Parks and Rec. So I kind of think it's up there because some of those episodes are just genius. I did not like Midsommar. A lot of people are saying, what about Midsommar? I mean, Midsommar as a movie was engaging. But sometimes if the message is too dark or satanic or nihilistic, it's very difficult for me to like the film. So that's unfortunately the case with Together. So basically, you've got Allison Brie playing the needy, responsible wife, or I think they're dating. I can't remember if they're married or dating. Oh no, they want to get married, right? She wants to get married, and then you've got Dave Franco, James Franco's brother, is the listless millennial musician who is not having a lot of success, but he's still hoping in his band and thinking, oh, we're going to make it one day. And she kind of gets him to eventually concede to getting together because she does the very cringe thing about Community has a blackface joke, $5, Steve McLovin. Yeah, in fact, it turns out there's several episodes of Community that were pretty, quote, scandalous nowadays, as well as It's Always Sunny. And there's about 5 banned episodes of It's Always Sunny. That's how crazy. We're already in the dystopia. And if you go watch the episodes, the jokes are pretty innocuous, right? It's like Danny DeVito does blackface in one of them. Caitlin Olsen does it in one of them. And then she does this Latina cholo girl character that's pretty funny. I mean, it's like that's enough to get you your episode banned. I mean, this is insane. But this is where we are. Anyway, so back to Together. She ends up proposing to him. So we have this feminist statement that she's going to propose, and she does it at this big party with all of his like musician friends, and everybody just kind of cringes because Dave Franco's like, I don't know, right? And he doesn't go for it, but they're moving out to the country outside of New York. They want to get away from the city and focus on their relationship and growing up or whatever. But Dave Franco isn't ready for this. So when they get out to the countryside, they meet this gay teacher who tells them that they should go spend some time in the woods and just kind of frolic around and get back to nature. And, you know, somehow that will help them to solidify whether they want to be together or not. Well, it turns out there's this filth pool out in the woods, and maybe they're in Oregon. I forget where they are. I was thinking they were in New York. Maybe they're in Oregon. I forget. I'm getting all the movies mixed up because they all take place in different places. But they wander out in the woods, and they find a chapel that is sunken into the earth like a sinkhole, this old, quote, chapel. And in this chapel is this mysterious filth pool with nasty liquid. And because they get stuck down there, it rains really hard. They think, well, we may not be able to get out of here. It's raining too hard. We'll have to wait until it stops raining. And they decide, because they don't have any water, to drink the filth pool. Never drink from random filth pools. I can tell you this from experience in Florida. Tasted a lot of filth pools in Florida. Florida has a lot of filth pools. None of them taste good. They decide to do it for survival, and they wake up tripping out because it has a kind of a I guess it has a shroomish component to it. I don't know, but they start tripping out, and they notice that bells have been hung up all throughout the forest near this collapsed chapel. Their legs begin to stick together. They begin to be more and more drawn to each other. We think maybe their relationship is healing, but it turns out as they get intimate, they start to stick together. And as you could imagine, here they are kissing, and then their lips kind of stick together. Well, as you can imagine, this is an allegory for their relationship, right? Their relationship is a push-pull. She wants commitment. He doesn't want to commit. But then when he takes time apart, then he wants her back. And then he won't sleep with her, but then after several months, he decides he wants to. And he begins to have this overwhelming compulsion for her. And eventually, she ends up drinking this same filth pool. I kind of figured the whole movie out from the beginning. I knew that the gay teacher was in on it. And he's actually trying to get them to go drink this filth pool water because he wants them to merge. The craziest part about this movie, it is overall pretty lame. Here's the crazy part. This gay teacher says, it's kind of like Play-Doh. and the ancient Platonic dialogues. And he starts talking about the monad and Plato and this idea of all of us coming from one, and then we fell and became separate particular individuals. Now, I mean, he doesn't explicitly say that, but that's kind of what he's talking about in more normie terms, because obviously the normie audience has no idea what Plato is or what the monad is in terms of the systems, right? So I started thinking, oh, this is like some kind of weird cult where they're going to try to merge people together. Lo and behold, that's what it is. The guy, the gay teacher, turns out to be a hybrid two gay dudes that went through the cult ritual of merging into one. And they have to recruit other people to merge into one. And that, so essentially, Dave Franco and Alison Brie, there's the cult having their underground meetings there, merge into one. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you because I didn't really care for this movie. They become a hybrid seeming hermaphrodite. So it's no longer Alison Brie and Dave Franco. It's now the hermaphroditic gender non-binary being that is the synthesis of the two. So it's almost like a Monophysite horror movie. So if you want to understand why we would critique Oriental Orthodox Christology, it's the final state of Alison Brie and James Franco, which neither of which are either one. They're this other third thing, a tertium quid. But it's Platonic because it's like Baphomet, the original dual-gendered being. Baphomet's got the boobies and the equipment downstairs at once. The goat, right? Above, so below. But that's not new to Eliphas Levi or modern Satanism or Hermeticism. This is actually in Plato. Plato believed that the original, it's also in the Kabbalah, Adam Kadmon, the original non-gendered, non-binary, bisexual being is the original God being. This is also taught in Crowleyism, as we said, in Kabbalah, and Platonism and Hermeticism. So the idea, the esoteric occult idea behind a lot of the TRANZ stuff isn't just depopulation. It is all part of that. But a lot of these people actually believe the ideology of that somehow if we could erase all differences, and this kind of underlies communism and socialism too, right? If we could erase all differences and level the playing field entirely, and not just between ethnicities, races, people groups, or religions, but also between and classes, right? Class warfare, also gender. The most fundamental warfare from these people's perspective, this sort of occultic, alchemical perspective, or whatever you want to call it, hermetic perspective, is male and female. So if we get rid of the male and female, by necessity, we will also then get rid of all the other particularities and differentiations. And it's like what Aldous Huxley talks about in his perennial philosophy book, will create the big blob. Once everyone is a giant monochrome mono blob, there won't be anything to divide over. You won't have your religion and your ethnicity and your nation state and your tribe or your whatever. We're all one giant non-binary blob. And I'm not joking. Anyway, so that is that movie. I was surprised to see the Platonic monad getting over and getting beyond all differentiation themes. That was not what I expected in this movie. But then again, I don't know about Dave Franco, but James Franco is actually openly interested in Crowley. He's done himself Crowley rituals or tried to reenact them. I'm not joking. If you look this up, he spent several days trying to reenact some elaborate Crowley ritual. Yeah, here it is. Now, supposedly this is performance art, but Twilight star Newt C.R. Brian Butler performed Crowley ritual together with James Franco. And then here's a bunch of dorks watching on. Oh, look how cool this is. They're doing the Bart Zabel working. And I don't know who this chick is. She's supposed to be from Twilight or something. Anyway, James Franco has some role in this. I don't know what his role is. Um, all right, this is too bright. Let me turn this on. Here we go. They wanted to invoke the spirit of Bartzabel, the spirit of Mars, into James Franco. What? Oh, update. James Franco missed his flight, and there was a stand-in actor. Okay, I didn't know this. Did he miss the flight, or did he just decide, okay, no, I don't really want, you know, butt demons inside of me? And I'm not joking, because Crowley famously would insert himself into Victor Newberg's butt. But yeah, this was eventually. So in other words, regardless of whether it was actually James Franco that showed up, we know that James Franco, perhaps Dave, I don't know, do at least have some interest in Crowley and Crowleyan rituals. And the whole ethos of Crowley is actually, as Crowley himself said, the equalization of all actions and all values. Did you know that? The equalization of all actions and all values. Because from Crowley's perspective, or so he argued, if everything is equal, then the only thing that determines what's good and evil is the will of the magus, right? So everything that's out there is just literally equal. I will determine as the most powerful magus, good, evil, male, female, etc., whatever I want, based on my will, you see. Now, the other film I do want to mention was a much better film. I might play some of this futuristic jazz music in a second. So hold on, let me pull this up over here. The cinematography, the music, everything in Weapons was on point. Now, my only criticism of Weapons is that it has a couple gruesome, like overly gruesome scenes that just weren't necessary. So a couple of times I had to turn my head away just because it was too gross. Otherwise, this was a really good movie. So basically, brief analysis. Oh, and I forgot to mention in Together, the cult, for whatever reason, had bells with all-seeing eyes on the bell. I'm assuming this is supposed to mean wedding bells, and that you maybe some inversion of the bell that's rung during the liturgy or the mass, right? The wedding bell, the call to mass, or the invocation, epiclesis in the Orthodox liturgy. When the priest is praying, you hear the bells, smells and bells. But interestingly, Weapons also has bells with curious symbology associated with them. I'll give you what I think is going on, and then I want you guys, if you have seen it yet, to let me know what you think is going on, because sometimes in films, and particularly in this one, there's some ambiguity in interpreting the symbology. I don't exactly know how to interpret it. So we have a kind of a middle America, average small town, and this strange event has occurred where the children in one classroom have all disappeared except for one child. So in the middle of the night, 17 of them just sort of ran away in the middle of the night at 2:17 a.m. And they ran in this very sort of weird posture to we don't know where. So the whole town ends up in a tizzy, and obviously, and then for the next year or two, they're very upset. And they blame Julia Garner, who I'm sure you've seen in many movies, because they all disappeared from her class for some reason. I don't know why this trailer is so dark, dude. I can't see anything. You know, this chick, right? So the whole town begins to blame her because they think that it had to have been her class for some reason. And after the feds and the FBI and the police and everybody sort of looks into this, nobody can figure out what happened. So Josh Brolin plays one of the dads who lost his son, and he, of course, also originally blames Julia Garner's character for it. She's developed an alcoholic, she's become an alcoholic after all this, and she's thinking, oh, I'm going to have to move, I have to, find another job, I can't live here anymore. And is it a sequel to Barbarian? No, I think it's the same people that made Barbarian, which is also a pretty good horror movie, but it is not a sequel. It's a totally different thing. Anyway, Josh Brolin decides that it's her, and so he's got this red paint, and he paints on her car witch in paint that you can't scrub off. So you begin to think, okay, there maybe is a witch involved. It's got witchcraft involved, and maybe it is Julia Garner, but she decides, I'm going to have to prove myself innocent or else no one's going to believe me. We're going to figure out what happened to these kids. So they both end up teaming up. But the best part of the movie is, I think, that it's told in that style. Very few movies are done this way. I can only think of a few. There's one that has Patrick Swayze that's pretty good. It's called 11/11, I think. And it's each character's vantage point of the same day. Which is kind of difficult. Pulp Fiction's kind of that way. I mean, it's kind of difficult to pull off, I think. That's why a lot of people don't do it. Is it 11? Let me have I got the name wrong. Maybe it's not 11/11. There's a movie with Patrick Swayze from some years back that is the same style of film. We're going to go back to open forum here in a second, so I'm almost done covering the movies. If you're that impatient, just hold on. $11.14, maybe that's it. Yeah, this is it. Yeah. Oh, I forgot Hilary Swank was in this. So basically, this whole film is told from the vantage point of 5 different characters in one evening as they all intersect in one crazy event, right? And I don't really remember this kind of a story since then, right? I mean, I'm sure there's been some movie told in this way, but it's a unique, out of time, way to tell stories, and it was done very well. And so you're totally engaged. Every single character's vantage point is not just kind of absurd, and it's comedy too, right? It has elements of comedy, which I think make it overall a really good film. It's not just a horror movie. But to get back to the esoteric point, and I'm going to spoil it for you. So, shocker here. Spoiler alert right here. So, it is a witch. And you kind of become, obsessed in the second half of the movie, figuring out, okay, who is the witch? Who's doing the witchcraft? Because we've seen these sort of passing images and glances of some kind of creepy looking witch. But we can't really make out what it is or what's going on. And the witch has her own network of symbology, I guess we could say, which connects her to, on the one hand, we see triangles consistently positioned throughout the film. And the triangle of manifestation, I think, is what this refers to, because that is very important in just most forms of witchcraft, whether it's more ceremonial witchcraft or Sanders, Gardnerian, whatever type of witchcraft it is. The triangle of manifestation is very important. It's a very fundamental symbol within witchcraft. And I actually, as soon as I saw the opening of the film, they showed us this triangle, and I was like, oh, it's going to be witchcraft. So I knew nothing about the movie other than that everybody was saying it was good. So I was pretty much right there. I didn't know who was going to be the witch, because it kind of leads you on some trails and you get distracted. But the witch also has a bell, and her bell has the number 6 on it and the triangle of manifestation. And it was just odd that we'd watched a movie the night before with, this cult that had the bells with the all-seeing eye on it. Here we have the witch has a bell with the number 6 and the triangle manifestation on it. I don't know what the purpose of the number 6 was. Obviously, I know that 6 in Scripture refers to man being made, right? The creation of man, you know, 666. I mean, there could be a lot of obvious references to the number 6. I don't exactly know what the purpose of the witch having 6 in this movie was, though. I also don't know if you did see it, when Josh Brolin has the dream that kind of helps him start to think about figuring out who's behind the missing kids. He sees a giant assault rifle in his dream. Again, I don't know why that was there. I think, given that the movie's titled Weapons, maybe it was just a archetypal, symbolic reference to weapons, and we're trying to figure out, why is the movie named Weapons? We haven't really seen a lot of weapons in the film. Like, there's one cop that has a gun, and there's a guy with a knife, and this and that. There's not a lot of weaponry, so you start to think, okay, the weapons have to be something else. Well, you got it. Weaponized humans. Humans are the weapons, and they're weaponized when they're underneath the spell of the witch. And I think that this is a horror movie, that this is just a basic horror movie. I don't think it's trying to make a massive social commentary. But if I did try to make a social commentary, I would have to say that I mean, the way that people act in the movie, the way they're sort of going insane gradually as we get towards the climax of the film, it's almost like society is under a spell. People are going insane, they're going crazy, and we often want to say, oh, well, it's just, social factors, it's this and that. But what I liked about this, kind of like Twin Peaks, is like, maybe there's actually spiritual forces that are causing people to go insane. And in this town, basically a large portion of the town is actually under a spell. And that's why people are having these breaks and going insane. And the town ends up being, they end up discovering who the witch is. I won't say exactly all. I mean, I got to totally spoil it for you if you do want to see the movie. It is a little gruesome in a couple places, but yeah, maybe this kind of a movie has a much better insight into what's really going on. Like, people are actually under demonic spells. They're not just low IQ or, whatever. It's not just toxic food and toxic culture. That's all part of it, but maybe it's also witchcraft, in the sense of people are being influenced by dark spiritual forces. Let me know what you think below, if you watched either of the films, if you think I missed anything, if you have another interpretation of the Triangle of Manifestation. I forgot to mention that the children are being MK monarched as well. And that's the other element that was pretty prominent in Weapons. And I think Weapons it reminded me of Prisoners. Remember Villeneuve's Prisoners with Donnie Darko, and it was about the sort of taking of the youth, shall we say, and then reprogramming them. That was also what was going on with Weapons, but in this case, it's a sort of pretty powerful witchcraft cult. That the bells thing was like it's like an inverted version of the liturgy, right? So in the movie Together, we had wedding bells for the merging, because the whole issue is about, are they going to get married or break up? And then the bells in Weapons seem to be directly related to witchcraft. Another thing I thought about, why are you doing this? I don't understand the purpose of like the constant thumbing down. Like, what do you want to say? Jadis has a bell that she uses in Magician's Nephew, if you've read Narnia. So perhaps in the Golden Dawn and these kinds of things, bells play a prominent role.